So, Bill, we're in South Cemetery.
Yes.
And when we came here before, we were looking for something specific.
Right.
And we will cover those later. We did just do Ruth Blay, which will probably come out separately from this one. But why are we standing in front of this guy?
Well, this is Frank Jones, as you can see in the picture, and he was the most prominent, one of the very most prominent men in all of Portsmouth and New Hampshire. He was politician. You're going to talk more about this, but he was a very prominent man.
Yeah.
Probably not known as the kindest man, or he was sometimes referred to as a robber baron.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys where the deal always went his way. But he kind of made his fame and fortune by brewing beer.
Well, how did we discover I think the first time we were here,
Yes.
we were looking for other graves.
Yes. We were looking for the Christensen sisters, which is another story.
Which we will be talking about at another time.
And we were lost.
You're right.
And the two ladies appeared that were just out for a walk.
Yeah.
And then we inquired, and they didn't know, but it's interesting to note that the cemetery here, a great portion of South Cemetery, is privately owned. It's owned by the Griffin brothers. And lo and behold, one of the Griffin brothers was here in the cemetery that day. And of course, he directed us to the Christensen story.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the two ladies said, "Oh, you've got to know about Jack Jones." Frank Jones. I keep saying Jack. Poor Frank. I keep saying Frank. Yeah, it is Frank. And so, yes, we looked it up, and it's a fascinating story about Portsmouth and the early days of the city.
Well, Frank Jones basically lived from 1832 to 1902. So he was definitely also in, if you think of the Gilded Age and so on, he was there. Hiram, I think, was his brother.
Yes.
Frank and Martha Jones, who was his wife, is buried here. And he was, when those ladies talked about him, they said he was a robber baron.
Yes.
And of course, we come from a little further north in Portsmouth, and we were going, what's this? And they were rather surprised that we didn't know. We do now. So how did he get going? I mean, he was the director of an incredible amount of businesses.
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, he was involved with banks, hotels,
famously
by the Sea.
Wentworth by the Sea was one of his hotels.
He had a shoe store, restaurants, mills, publishing company, newspapers, and a steamship line.
Yeah.
And he did come from kind of modest background.
Yes.
So he was, you have to give him credit for that.
Worked his way up.
Self-made man. He started out with his brother. And that was a stove shop.
Yes.
And eventually, from what I understand, he went in as partner and ended up owning it. Which is pretty much, I think, part of the story.
Yes.
It's kind of repetitive. Probably, as Bill mentioned, the brewing company, Frank Jones Brewing, was at that time one of the most famous.
Yes.
And it was apparently went to the Boston area.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Keep going. Keep going. No, tell us the story. Tell us the story.
Well, the story goes that I've got a couple of stories, I guess, but he got the recipe for his ale, and I guess that was part of the thing, is that he was selling ale.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he was a tin peddler for a while.
Yeah.
And essentially, he apparently got the recipe from a housewife.
Yes, well,
he had seduced.
His partner was Swindell.
Yeah.
And he started working for the company, and then eventually came to own it.
Well, that's another story, actually. And I don't know if we can prove any of these exactly. Well, that one, I think maybe we can.
Yeah.
And the other story is that he bought out his partner.
Yes.
Which he probably did. He did serve 2 years in Congress. He was a mayor of Portsmouth.
2 terms, I believe.
And President Cleveland offered him a cabinet position. And
He did run for governor, I believe.
I did, yep, he lost that
Unsuccessfully.
bid, however.
Yeah.
The Frank Jones brewery building
Yes.
with the clock tower,
Yes.
and it was one of the most impressive buildings in Portsmouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was finished in 1888.
Mhm.
So he did. I mean, he lived large. His memorial is large.
Yeah.
And he
The
built
largest, yes. And he built it himself.
Now, there was a book put out called Frank Jones, King of the Ale Makers, and it was apparently written by Raymond Brighton and published by Peter Randall Publishing, who does quite a few local interest kinds of books. And they were saying, I don't think Ray thought, Peter was talking about Ray, and he did say, I don't think he thought that Jones was a hero.
Yes.
When he died, he left $5,000 to the city of Portsmouth. Now, this guy was,
Yes.
$5,000 was probably lunch,
Yeah,
you
he was
know.
a multimillionaire.
Yeah. So he was, apparently, at least, I mean, I hope we're being fair, but all accounts that we've run across, he wasn't exactly a benevolent guy.
Sorry, Frank.
I mean, somebody said he may not even been a very great, not a great guy either.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as another person put it, he was important, no matter how you look at it. And he did, another writer, historian, Richard E. Winslow, actually called him a captain of industry.
Yeah.
Which is a little nicer word than Robert
Barron, yes.
As you can see, this memorial stands out.
Yes, and it still is the largest in South Cemetery.
Yeah, we did do a couple of shots a little further back so you can see the whole thing. And essentially, anywhere you stand around here, this is
the focal point.
You see it. And actually, just to go back to the brother, oddly enough, who was buried here, he did commit suicide.
Yes.
So Frank takes over his business. Obviously, we can't know every detail of what happened, but it just seems that perhaps he was not treated well, and to do that. The other thing that's kind of noticeable about Frank is, usually a person who is this important, somewhere in Portsmouth, you would expect maybe to find a plaque, maybe some kind of memorial,
statue,
something. As far as we know, there's nothing, which may reflect,
I think so,
a little bit on Frank. I hope we're not being too tough on him.
Yes.
But Frank, you were obviously very good at what you did. You obviously knew how to make some money, and you knew how to run things. But I don't know. Implication is you might have been a little kinder or benevolent.
An interesting thing here is when we were setting up here, a young fellow came by and he said, "Oh, you're doing something on Frank Jones?" We go, "Yes." And then he goes, "Oh, you're the fellow that has those YouTube videos." We actually got recognized.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, which is a segue here for this next section, he is a collector of Frank Jones memorabilia from the brewery company.
Yeah.
And if you go on eBay, there's reams of it, of bottles and trays and advertising that's still out there. I mean, the brewery did go out of business in 1950.
Yeah. Okay.
But from before the Civil War, it was definitely one of the premier beers in New England.
Yeah.
A couple of things about it is that he did buy out his friend Swindell.
Yeah.
We can say maybe Swindell got swindled.
I don't know.
But by the Civil War, he was the most profitable, and he only had one other local competitor, which was Eldridge Brewing Company, also in Portsmouth, which was founded in 1864. It a little bit of irony. The state of Maine, about the time they were getting into business, the state of Maine went dry. There was prohibition in Maine. You couldn't buy alcohol. Well, naturally, it was just across the river from Portsmouth is the state of Maine. And he apparently did a little smuggling.
No.
He provided brews for the good men, probably at the shipyard.
Yeah.
But at one point, the brewery was brewing 150,000 barrels of ale. And that was in 1882.
Yeah.
And at the time, he was the largest producer of ale in the entire country.
Yeah. That's
Now that's, you have to kind of take that in context because the key word is ale. Other companies like Budweiser and some of the other, they were in business at the same time, and they were probably larger, much larger than he was, but they were brewing lager. So, he was putting out ale, which a lot of you, if you know something about beer in New England, there were a lot of the local breweries did ale.
Yeah.
They weren't brewing lagers. The brewery part of the brewery is still standing.
Yeah.
It's now a lot of it's gone. The clock tower, which was, it was 140 feet above the town. I think that's right. I probably got that wrong. But anyway, some of it's still standing. It's an apartment complex now, and there's some retail spaces and things in the lower portion of the building. But it's still a substantial building. It's still there. Another funny thing there was even a song about the beer, and I don't think it was like there were no commercials, no television in those days, but there was a song.
So you're going to sing this?
Well, I'm not going to sing it, but I will quote for it, and it's kind of cool. It's, "Hurrah for Jones Brewery, may it never fail. Brew us beer and porter and beautiful stock ale. That's the stuff for me, my boys. It drives away the pain. Whenever I can get a glass of it, I'll have it just the same." Well, Frank, cheers. You did know about brewing.
You did. And I interesting character in any case. And even though you were apparently thought of as the most benevolent, rest in peace. Oh, God.